Welcome to the start of Section 7 for the BJCP training program from the Brewers Anonymous Homebrew Club. This is the start of us taking a look at the ingredients that go into beer, starting with water. And in this first lesson, we're going to take a look at what this is going to cover, because there is a lot of information when it comes to water. And with that in mind, I'm going to start off by saying what the BJCP exam study guide wants us to know about water versus what questions have been reported on the exam don't exactly match. And to add to that, the guide wants us to know both basic and advanced topics with really nothing in between. So we've tried to cover all the material that the exam study guide suggests while bridging that gap a little bit between the basic and advanced information without adding too much information that most likely won't be on the exam. Rather, it's added to help make those more advanced details make more sense by leading up to them rather than just jumping forward to those advanced points with no background. Now, to further add frustration and to close out this part of the conversation, the number of questions that come up on water are very few. We're talking like 3, 4, maybe 5. So this is a lot of information for a very few questions, but we have no idea which questions we're going to get, so we need to be prepared. So on that note, let's get started. Water is a huge subject in terms of beer, and it's an equally huge part of each beer. Water accounts for 85 to 95% of a beer. That last 5 to 15% comes from the malts, hops, and yeast, or maybe some other additives you're putting in, depending on what beer style you're making. It's a subject that you can get pretty deep into very quickly. In fact, if you've gone through this entire program so far, you know that there's a book that addresses water alone in the Elements of Brewing series, and that is Water, A Comprehensive Guide for Brewers by Colin Kaminsky and John Palmer. And I point that out because even with this being a rather long section to the course, it's still a very basic look at water. And if you want to learn more about it for your own education and even for your own brewing, I would start with this book right here. This will give you a lot more information and a lot of helpful information as well, and water in brewing. But now, having said how complicated and in-depth water can be in brewing, it can also be as simple as this direct quote from the BJCP exam study guide. And that is, as a general rule, if tap water is drinkable, it may be used for brewing. But of course, that's not where this conversation ends, and neither is this section. So let's take a look at how this section is going to be broken down in terms of water and brewing. First, building from that quote on tap water, and with a lot of brewers' tap waters being supplied by cities, townships, etc., they're likely to be treated with chlorine or chloramine. We don't want that in our beer for sure, and there's good news, we can remove it. And lesson 2 talks about how we can do that. Lesson 3, we cover alkalinity, what it is, what it means for brewing, and why we need to know these things. pH is covered in lesson 4, and again, we'll learn what it is and why as a brewer, not only do we care about what our pH measurement is, but why we need to know that in our brewing process. Lesson 5 explores water hardness, what's in the water that makes it hard, and what the good and bad that could be in our brewing process. Lesson 6 will talk about what we can do to modify our water when these characteristics we've just discussed aren't optimal for the beer style we intend to brew. Lesson 7, we're going to look at famous water profiles, what they are, what they've done for beer around the world, and what innovations and techniques have been developed to adapt beer to maximize the characteristics of these waters. Then finally, if you get anything out of this section in terms of your entrance exam, it will most likely be from this lesson. Of the few questions on water that have appeared on the exam, most of them come from this subject, general water profiles, their influence on beer, and what styles they are best suited for. So that's it for the introduction. There is a lot of information on this subject, and we're going to take it piece by piece, one step at a time. So let's get those steps moving by going on to lesson 2, and I'll see you there.